Hello and welcome back to my Dandelion Diaries. We are continuing on in the Ink Explorations Season 2, and today is the highly voted purple inks. So when I did the community poll on this, it was basically a dead tie between green and purple, so we did it again, and purple won by just a very few votes, so here we are. I'm going to be doing 21 inks today, at least that's my goal. And as for supplies, I still have my A5 Hobonichi notebook here with the original Tomoe River paper, jar of water, a t-shirt. I will be using my pipette dropper, my acrylic stamp block, and then a Kakimori brass tip pen with the aluminum handle today. Since there's so many inks to kind of get through today, I'm going to do my best to not ramble, but I mean, I may have some thoughts about some of these because purple is one of my favorite colors to write with. But we're going to get started with the first one, which is Kobe number 56, Rokko Shichidanka. And this is a nice purpley lavender color with a little bit of a blueness to it. It's not quite blurple, but it's leaning that way. The main thing about this ink for me is the shading, and honestly the Kobe brand has been surprising me a little bit lately with all of the new colors I've been able to try, and this one is definitely a very gorgeous purple color. I don't know how it behaves in a pen yet because if I'm being honest it's pretty new to me, but the color of this is really pretty and I quite like that it is a little bit purple with a blue, like a little bit blue with a little bit of purpleness to it too, but not quite blurple. I don't know, it's a nice one. Next we have Vinta Maskara, and this is a very light colored lilac-y lavender purple color. It has some really beautiful shading. I honestly find this to be pretty nice in writing, at least with the medium nibbed pen. I haven't gone much finer than that just because the color is a bit light, but it is nice and soft, and I don't know, it's kind of like a dreamy looking, like it's definitely a really good, interesting, light lavendery purple color. Next we have one of my personal favorites, and that is Troublemaker's Foxglove. And my only complaint with this ink is it's a little bit dry, but that's pretty common with the Troublemaker inks in general, so you just need a really good wet flowing pen for it. But the color of this is like a rainbow of purples in a way. It goes kind of like a blurple area to more of like a pinky red purple. It's still on the lighter purple end. It's not going to be quite true purple, but the shading in it is very lovely and gives it a very dynamic look in writing. I have seen this ink on a lot of creators' channels lately, and it is a gorgeous color and very worth the hype, but just be aware that it is a bit dry if you don't like drier inks. Next we have a new to me ink courtesy of Sorsha, and this is Dieman Industries Sunset. And this ink is a lovely lilac-y purple color, a bit towards the pink end is what I mean by lilac-y, and it does have a beautiful shimmer to it as well. It's kind of like a golden pink shimmer, maybe champagne-y, not quite rose gold, but it's definitely in that warmer, like rosy gold realm. Overall, the shading in this ink really does surprise me, which you'll see a lot better at the end when this is all dried down, but it is a beautiful, nice color. I have not used this in a pen yet, so I can't speak to how light it would be, but in the swatch, it does range kind of like a light to medium color, so in finer nibbed pens, maybe extra fine, it would be really hard. And since it has shimmer, it may have the tendency to cause issues. It just depends on your flow and your feed and all that kind of stuff. Next we have Ferris Press Purple Jade Rabbit, and this is basically the shimmering version of their ink called Little Robinia. And this ink is truly very light purple. It does have a bit of blue haloing to it when it dries, and the shimmer is kind of like a lavendery silver color. It's very beautiful, and I think it's gorgeous with painting purposes, but writing for me with this ink is just not my favorite because of how light it is. Honestly, in a stub nib, it does beautifully and it looks really cool with all the shading on top of the shimmer. But in anything finer than that, like even a broad, I've never had a good experience with it. So I use this mainly for painting and then also for a stub nib when I feel the urge. Moving into more medium purples, we are going to be swatching KWZ's Gummiberry, and this is the non-Iron Gall version. And this is a gorgeous medium red purple. It does have a little bit of shading, but honestly it's pretty, I don't know, It's pretty normal throughout. And if you haven't seen any of my other videos where I talk about KWZ as a brand, the ink does have a scent to it when it's wet, and it does smell a bit like a vanilla or a sweet smell. So just keep that in mind with this brand in general. The color, though, is very vibrant and saturated and looks very, very lovely in writing. It's a really tried and true ink. Honestly, it's a great purple. If you needed something standard and this was in your price range, I would say this is a good pick. Next, we have Faber-Castell's Violet Blue. And when this ink is wet, it does not look blue at all. It is just purple. It's a very nice shader though when it dries, and I'll speak to that more again when it dries. But it's a really nice kind of multi-tonal purple. It does have some blue-ish areas, but it also has some red-ish areas. It's a very interesting ink. Honestly, Faber-Castell is kind of a sleeper brand to me. Some of the inks are fantastic, and some of them are like, it's okay. And this is one of the ones that I feel is pretty fantastic, honestly. Next, we have Van Dieman's Harvest series, and this is called Tasmanian Lavender. And this is a nice soft purple color. It almost has a bit of a dustiness to it, but not quite dusty enough to make it be called dusty. It's a purple, duh, but it has a bit of a like reddish pink to it as well. So I don't really consider this a true lavender color to my standards, just because I find lavender to be a bit more blue, at least the actual flower, but the color of this is very nice and very soft. And I don't know, with this ink, I don't have a love for it, but I also don't have a hate for it. It kind of just sits in the middle for me. Next, we have Waterman's Tender Purple. And Waterman is one of those brands that has been popularized as being very reliable, very well behaved, and I find that to be absolutely true. I have never had any problems with the Waterman brand in general. All inks are well flowing, they behave well in any pen I put them in. I never have issues with bleeding, feathering, or anything on any kinds of paper. It's just a really nice, solid, good ink. The color of Tender Purple is definitely more of a reddish purple color. It is beautiful and rich and saturated. It has a little bit of shading going on, but not a whole lot. And honestly, is a very nice, good purple. And to me, Waterman is a pretty fairly priced ink. So if you wanted a good, like, standard purple color, this is a really good pick. Next up, we have Papier Plume's Violet. And this is a very dynamic ink in terms of it being wet. Dry, whole different story. But anyways, this ink is a nice kind of neon purple color. It has a very vibrant look to it, like almost like it's lit in a way, like a light bulb. It is very beautiful. The flow of Papier Plume inks are fantastic. Honestly, a lot of their inks that I've tried have been really great. Lots of different color aspects going on, and overall just a really nice ink brand. I cannot find these for the life of me anywhere else than Vanessa pens, and I don't know if I'm just looking in the wrong places, if my Google search is just failing me, I don't know. But if you know other places to buy this ink, please let us know down in the comments, because Papier Plume is a really nice ink brand, and I think it needs a little bit more attention. Next up, we have an ink that I mixed myself, but it is based on the recipe from Birmingham Pen Company's website, and this is Violet Sea Snail. And although I mixed this one myself based on the instructions on their website, this may be slightly off from the actual bottled version of this ink if you have that in your collection, just because I think mixing inks, you know, there's going to be maybe a slight variation. Which, let me go on a tangent for a little bit. Birmingham Pen Company offers Atominks, which I got some samples sent to me by Zavi, a pen friend, and then I also ended up purchasing full bottles of a lot of them myself because I was just really having so much fun. And you can mix those inks to create colors that they have on their website already for sale. Depending on the ink, there will be a recipe for it. Some of them don't have recipes, some of them do. You just have to kind of pick and choose what you're looking for. And this is honestly one of the favorite purples that I mixed, and I really wanted to share it because it's quite beautiful. Tangent aside, the color of this is a nice, rich, medium purple color. It has a bit of a blue lean to it, but also a bit of a pink lean to it, and it definitely has some shading, which is something that I really enjoy right now. I'll wait till it fully dries to describe it a little bit more, just because I've talked a little bit too long already. But it is a very nice ink, and as I've said on this channel a lot recently, I am currently obsessed with the Birmingham Pen Company inks. Next up, we have Private Reserve's Infinity Violet. And this is a nice, darker, rich purple color. The thing that makes it infinity, as far as I know, is that this ink is formulated to basically never dry out in your pen. I think somebody I saw did an experiment where they left their pen uncapped with this ink in it, and it was still writable by the next morning, uncapped all night or something like that, which I think is honestly pretty cool. But I don't know, there's something about the Private Reserve brand that I just kind of like shy away from, kind of like with the Noodlers brands. The Private Reserve has beautiful colors and it's a really nice consistency, but I find they just leave this almost residue in my pens, and I don't know enough about them to kind of really speak to it, but I don't usually use this brand of ink a whole lot, but they do have some very lovely colors. Same to be said for Noodlers, which I think I have another ink coming up, which is Noodlers. Next up, we have Diamine's Little Pip, which is a Cult Pens Iridescent, I think is how you would say it. And this sample was sent to me by Jana, so thank you, Jana. And then Sorsha also sent me a second sample, so I have a lot of ink to play with this one. And this purple is dark and moody and beautiful, and it has sheen. Let me tell you, it's got sheen. So the sheen is kind of green / yellow, and we'll cover that a little bit more again when we get to the dried swatches, but I want to talk about the consistency of this ink for a minute. Since it has sheen, it has a bit of a oiliness to it when writing, and it's not a terrible experience, and I've only written with it with dip pens, let me say, since it is a new ink to me, but I can feel this kind of like oiliness to it when I write with it, and I don't know if it's because of the iridescent factory setting in it or whatever, but it definitely has an interesting writing feel to it. I don't mind it. It's not terrible. I find it kind of interesting. Next we have Les Artisans Encre Classique Lilas. And this ink I have trouble with actually calling purple, but it is purple. So when I originally picked up this ink, I was like, this is a magenta ink. This isn't purple. This is totally a dark magenta. And it does have a bit of a red purple to it, like magenta, but it is purple. When it dries completely, it definitely fits more into the purple family than it does the magenta family. I still really like this ink. I find this brand to be very affordable, and it does have quite an array of colors, but this ink isn't my favorite purple, and I think it's just because I want it to be more purple than it actually is, which is silly because there's so many other inks out there. But it's a beautiful color, a bit of a red lean to it, has a bit of shading, and is definitely a nice reddish purple color. Next up, we have the only Sailor purple I'm going to include in this video, but there are just 1,010,000 purple Sailor inks out there. But this is Sailor Ink Studios 435. And this is another one of those reddish purple colors that may kind of be magenta, but I still consider this one to be a purple. And that's mainly because of the shading that it has. I'll wait to talk about it more when it dries, but this is a beautiful, nice, rich red purple color. It has a very deep, saturated look to it, and is very, I don't know, it reminds me of like a violet flower in your garden or something. It's very pretty, like it's just pretty. There's a lot of Sailor Ink Studio purples out there, and as much as I would love to do a whole range of them for this video, I wanted to try to include more brands than just Sailor. But there's seriously every color under the sun in purple. With Sailor, you can get chroma shading ones, dark ones, more blue purple ones. They have every shade of purple possible. Now we have Noodler's purple. And I find this ink from Noodlers to be pretty okay. I don't experience any weird drying issues with this one or bleeding or anything. It's pretty just like standard purple ink. Only thing, like I said, with the Private Reserve ones, with the Noodlers, I find I have a lot more struggles with them, so I don't really like this brand in general. I do have a few inks from them from a variety of colors, but majority of them do take forever to dry for me and usually have feathering or some other kind of issue. This one, however, does pretty okay, and I'm happy with that because it is a very lovely purple color. It is kind of more like a pilot purple color to me, where it's a little bit deeper, a little bit more saturated, and it has a little bit of red lean to it, but not quite enough to make it like the Sailor 435 or the Lilas. It's definitely more on the purple range. I like it, but again, not my favorite, probably because it's just a brand bias thing, but it is what it is. And next up we have Colorverse's Hayabusa Glistening. You want neon blurple? You want shimmer? You want sheen? This ink's got you. This ink is so fun. It reminds me a lot of the Lamy Azurite with shimmer, if I'm being honest, but the sheen's not as strong as the Lamy Azurite. But the color of this is so beautiful. It is a nice, rich blue-purple color. It doesn't really have shading that I remember, but the shimmer in it matches it very well, and it has this kind of like limeish green sheen going on with it too. It is so dynamic. I honestly like the Colorverse brand, but I find them to be a bit expensive because you get a small little round bottle for the price, but it is what it is. But this color is absolutely stunning and very unique. I don't find a lot of inks to be this bright or deep in saturation with a blurple color. Next we have Taccia's Hiroshige Nakamurasaki. And this Taccia ink is just honestly underwhelming for me. It is just kind of flat. I guess I wanted it to be more than it was because all of the other Taccia inks that I have are just amazing. But this one just kind of underwhelms me, if I'm being honest. It is a nice deep purple, almost to a purple black in some areas. And it does have a nice flow, which is constant with the Taccia inks that I've experienced. But it's just not exciting enough for me to pay the price for this ink. It is just a really nice medium dark purple, and that's it. Like it doesn't have anything exciting to it for me. And after that we have Robert Oster's Sydney Lavender. This ink was recommended to me by a viewer, so thank you if you were the one who directed me at this one, because it is a beautiful purple color. It does have a lot of different shades of purple going on. When it dries, I'll talk a little bit more about that, but as a wet ink, I find this flow very, very nice. There are some Robert Oster inks out there that are super, super wet, and there are others that are a little bit more towards the dry side, but still pretty standard. And I find this one to be in the middle of both of those. It's got like a nice flow, but not super wet, not super dry, and it has a really good color base that's kind of like a range of pinky purples to purple grays. I really like this one. It's very dynamic, very interesting, and I find it to be quite fun to play with. After that, we have Wearingeul's Persephone, and this is a new ink as of 2024, I believe, maybe 2023 at the end. I don't really remember when this one was released, but Persephone and Hades were the two inks released together with this, and I love this color. It is like a red, purple, black, and it has this pink to purple shimmer going on, and it's just really, really pretty. I have not put this in a pen yet, so I can't really attest to how it writes, if any of those like properties show up in writing, but the swatchings of this one and getting to play with it in like just doodles is just so much fun. I really like this ink. And when you put them next together, the Hades and Persephone, they're kind of like mirror images of each other, and the shimmers kind of like flow together a little bit. It's so cool. But yeah, I really like this one quite a lot. And then we have Three Oysters Purple Gray. And this is definitely a nice purpley gray color. I don't love this one, if I'm being honest. I think it's just not the color I want it to be with this naming. And honestly, the fact that gray is spelled with an A kind of throws me a little bit because I'm used to spelling it with an E. But it is definitely a fun ink bottle if you were to get a bottle of Three Oysters, just because they have a corner cut off that it'll sit on its side, kind of like a little cube on its side. But the color of this ink is nice and purple and gray mixed together. It's a good blend to be purple gray. I don't love it. It's okay. It has some shading, but it's not like my favorite on the page. And I was gonna leave the video with 21 inks, and then I have one space left, so I might as well include another one. And I really wanted to include Rainbow's End, which is from the Purple Ink Vent this year. This was not the finale color, but it is a bright purple that I wanted to include it with this. And like I said, this ink is a nice, bright, vibrant purple, a bit of the bluer side of purples. It's not quite red, but the shimmer in it is this gorgeous kind of like rainbowy gold to pink shimmer, and it's really quite fun to see on a page. But yeah, I really loved the Diamine Purple Ink Vent. In terms of purples, they had several, and I thought that was really cool. And I'm kind of excited to see what they pick for the 2024 ink vent color and what we're going to get with that, because we've already gotten a red, blue, green, and purple. So I wonder what the next one's going to be. Alrighty, I'm going to let these finish drying down and we'll come back and do close-ups of the dried swatches. But I do want to mention that I'm trying my best to include a bunch of different brands, not necessarily in the same color like tone, so like not all medium purples like I've done before or light purples, but just a different brand, and you can see what kind of purples they have. And I'm hoping that this didn't disappoint. But like I said, I'll see you guys in a minute with some dried swatches and we'll do some close-ups. Okay, I am back. Everything has pretty much dried down, so I'm going to zoom in, do some close-ups, and then I'm also going to flip back to my previous purple ink explorations too. But let's go ahead and zoom in. So starting off, we had Kobe number 56, Rokko Shichidanka. Again, pronunciation's not my strongest with these kinds of things, but this is a beautiful purple. It has some lovely shading from kind of like a pinkness to more of a medium dark purple. Definitely more on the neutral side with a little bit of a pink lean. It's not super blue or super red. It's pretty dead in the center, and honestly has a really nice flow. I haven't been able to play a lot with this one because it is one of the newer colors to me by Kobe, but it is a beautiful color at that. Then we had Vinta Maskara. In terms of shading, it has this beautiful kind of like blue, baby blue haloing going on with pink shading and like a more lavender lilac-y background. It's very pretty, very dynamic. But again, a bit light, so I don't know if this is something I would be using all the time, but I like it. I don't know. I feel like Ferris Press's Little Robinia is really close to this too, which I'll flip to that later, but it's a nice color for sure. Then we have Troublemaker's Foxglove. Again, a very popular ink amongst all of the Troublemaker fans just because of the shading alone. It goes from like a medium pink to this kind of blue-purple halo, and the background color is definitely more of a pinky purple lilac-y color. It's very pretty. I do find this ink to be a bit dry, but it is a nice one if you have a really wet flowing pen and you want it to write a little bit finer. So like a Twisby, for example, writes pretty wet for me, and if I want it to be extra fine in my extra fine nib, this actually would show up a bit more extra fine. Then we have Dominant Industries Sunset. I really like the shimmer in this one. It's kind of like I said, that rosy gold color, but it's not quite rose gold. Maybe it's more like champagne. I'm not sure. But the shading on this one is very pretty. It's so interesting to see, I guess, like these three together here and how different they are, but also how similar. But the Dominant Industries Sunset has a bit of that purple blue haloing going on, more of a medium pink center, and then the base color again is kind of like that lilac-y purple color. Then we have Ferris Press's Purple Jade Rabbit. Very light, very soft, very dainty purple color. It does have a bit of a blue halo for this one as well, and the shimmer is more of like that silvery lavender color. It's pretty. I prefer the Little Robinia, honestly. This is nice. It's just, I don't need the shimmer in this one for it to be what it is. And it is very light, very, very light. So if you struggle with light inks, this is probably not one to pick up. Then we have KWZ's Gummiberry. I still really like this one. On camera, it's showing up a bit more blue than it is in person. In person, it is a bit more on the pink side, or red side, if you will. It does have a very minor black sheen going on here, but nothing super crazy. It's just a little bit of that multi-tonal purple shading going on. And I mean, I like KWZ inks, and I haven't tried the Iron Gall version of this, but if you like Iron Gall inks, there is an Iron Gall version of this purple. Then we had Faber Castell's Violet Blue. Like I said, this ink brand is kind of a sleeper. There's some really good ones and some okay ones, and I consider this to be one of the really good ones. The shading in this is phenomenal. It goes from this nice, rich, like purple to purple black halo going on, more of like a rich purple shade to a lighter purple shade. And it has some nice areas that are more saturated than others, and it's very interesting. I love this ink. It's very pretty, although I don't really see the blue aspect of it as much as I would want. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely more of a medium purple. It's not really super blue or super red. Then we had Van Diemen's Tasmanian Lavender. I like this ink. It's not my favorite. It is a bit more of a dusty purple, but it's not quite dusty enough to be labeled dusty to me. It just has some nice shading within the purple family. Again, no shading or anything, a pretty flat ink, but it's a nice color, and if you like this brand, then go for it. Then we have Waterman's Tender Purple, and again, this one's showing up a little bit more blue on camera than it is in person, but this has this greenish yellow sheen to it in some areas. It's very faint. I honestly don't really get the sheen in writing with this one, but the Waterman brand is very reliable, performs well in pretty much every pen that I have personally tried them in. And this is a lovely, lovely purple color, and honestly is a pretty good price for this brand as well. Then we have Papery Plume's Violet, and I think when I originally swatched this, I talked about it being like a neon purple, and I'm still going to stand by that. It's showing off very blue, but it is very purple in person, and it has kind of a little bit of a sheen, not really super crazy or anything, but the shading goes from this like vibrant medium purple to more of a lighter purple color. Although I will say in writing, you mainly get the kind of medium purple color in here. You don't really get much of anything else. But this color is very unique to me just because of how vibrant it is. Then we have my mix of Birmingham Pen Company's Violet Sea Snail. I love this ink. Again, showing up a little bit more blue on camera, but it is kind of like a dusty purple to a medium purple color. I don't know, I really like this, and I've been having a lot of fun playing with the Birmingham Pen Company Atomic inks, and we'll probably make a video at some point when I have time, but it's a really nice color, and I do think I want to try out some more of the Birmingham Pen Company purples just because there's so many to choose from. Then we have Private Reserve's Infinity Violet. This one is nice and pretty flat throughout. It does have a little bit of shading going on, nothing super crazy that I would really consider shading, but the color of this is a nice saturated purple color. It's more on the neutral side. It's showing up a little bit more blue on camera again, but it's definitely kind of more of a neutral purple color. Then we have Diamine's Little Pip, and there's that sheen I was talking about. So it's kind of green in person and kind of yellow on camera, so maybe it's kind of both depending on which angle you're looking at. Yeah, it's a really quite interesting ink, and I think the oily feel with writing with it, I don't know if oily is the right word, it's just very syrupy, maybe that's a better word. It definitely contributes to a very smooth experience, at least writing with dip pens that I have experienced with it. It's very like singular, like swiping. I don't know how to describe it. But it's nice, and I like the sheen. It's very, very cool, and not a lot of purple inks have this much sheen going on. Then we have the Les Artisans Lilas, which has a little bit of a green to yellow sheen going on with this one as well. It's definitely more of that red purple, almost magenta, but still purple, pretty firm in the purple for me. I like this brand. It's really affordable, and they have quite a few colors to choose from as well, which I think I already mentioned. But Lilas is a nice reddish purple color with a little bit of a sheen going on. Then we had Sailor Ink Studios 435. Again, much like the Lilas, these two are very close together in that they are a bit more on the red purple side, almost to magenta, but still pretty firm in the purple. But the shading in this one does have a bit more of a pinkness to it as well. I'm not sure if the camera is going to pick up the different shading that's going on in the writing, but this ink does perform very well with the almost pink to purple range that it has going on. Then we have Noodler's Purple, which again, not a huge fan of the Noodler brand, but this one does pretty well for me. At least it's dry and it didn't do any bleeding or feathering or anything crazy. I find that this purple is pretty standard. It's pretty neutral in the middle. It's not super red or super blue. And there's not really a whole lot of shading or anything exciting going on. It has a very minor sheen that's showing up, but I've never had sheen in writing with this one. So it's pretty much just a nice standard purple ink. Then we have Colorverse's Hayabusa Glistening. I don't know if the shimmer is going to show up very well because it didn't really come through that well, but it's kind of like a purple, like gold shimmer. But the sheen you can definitely see, and it's very bright in person, and on camera it's showing up a little bit more muted, but it is kind of like a neon greenish color. This is definitely a blurple. It's more on the blue purple side, and it's really quite interesting. I really like this one. Then we had Taccia's Hiroshige Nakamurasaki pronunciation. This one, again, like I said, isn't my favorite Taccia ink out there just because it's not giving what I want it to give. It is a nice dark purple color. It has some purple black aspects to it. It's a really nice ink brand. The consistency is phenomenal, but for the price, I would want a bit more of a dynamic look to it for a purple ink. Then we have Robert Oster's Sydney Lavender, which is a bit more of a grayish purple color. The shading in this one is really interesting, and it's shaded a lot more than it has in some of my other swatches, and it may just be because it's in a smaller swatch. But it has a black haloing going on, which is so cool, like a muddy purpley gray shade, and then the base of it is more of like a lighter purple gray. It's very pretty. So again, whoever suggested this in the comments, thank you. This is a great one for sure. Then we have Wearingeul's Persephone. There's the purple side of the shimmer, and I don't know if I'll get it to go to the pink side. Maybe this way. But it has pink to purple shimmer going on, and the base color is definitely more of like a purple, black, purple grayish color, and is very, very pretty. New to me, I haven't written with it yet, but this ink is gorgeous, and I got a sample of the Hades as well, and I am not disappointed at all. I think paired together they would be really cool as like a dynamic duo kind of situation. Then we had Three Oysters Purple Gray, and this is nice. Like I said, it's not my favorite. It does have some nice shading to more of a purple black to a purple gray, and it is a cool bottle. If you ever get a bottle from Three Oysters, that it stands on its side is really interesting. But I'm just not enamored with this ink, and I don't know why, because it's like right up my alley. It's just, there's something about it that's just not quite enough there for me. Then we had Diamine Rainbow's End, which has this gold to pink shimmer going on. I don't know if I'll be able to get it to go gold on camera, but the base color of this, there we go, it's kind of gold. The base color of this is definitely a nice, bright, bluish purple color, and the shimmer being pink to gold is just kind of fun in general. I did really enjoy the Diamine ink event last year, the purple one, and I'm excited to see what they come out with for 2024 and what color is going to be like the end color for this year. As promised, I'm going to flip through some of the other purples that I've done in previous videos, specifically the ink explorations and also one of the Ferris Press inks. This one is the Auroralis, which I kind of wanted to include in today's video, but I didn't. But it has this cool like yellow pink shimmer going on and a dark purple base. Honestly, very close to Diamine Deck the Halls, but not quite as dark. This was the purple black that I did, where a lot of these inks show up a lot more black on camera than they do in person. But we have Ferris Press's Tanzanite Sky, Diamine's Solar Storm, Monteverde Chameleon, Elephant, Mandarin Duck Breast by Van Dieman, Birmingham Pen Company's Byzantium, and I also included Colorverse Witch by Starlight on here, even though this one is probably considered more on the blue end of the spectrum. I consider it still to be kind of like a blurple, so I wanted to include it here. Then we had more on the dark purple pages here. Ferris Press's Poison Envy, Diatramentis Alexander Hamilton, one of my absolute favorites. Diamine Deck the Halls. I even included Sailor Shikiori's Hara Hara on here, even though this one is kind of like a more muddy purple pink color. Then we had the standard purples between Roar and Klingner's Cassia, such a fantastic color. Diatramentis Violet Copper, and then also Monteverde's Birthday Cake, which has some residual shimmer floating on top of it, but the shading in the Birthday Cake is one of my favorites. And then for light purples, we had anything from Robert Oster's Violet Dreams to Sailor Ink Studios 224, Sailor Ink Studios 123, Sailor Manyo Nekoyanagi, Sailor Manyo Fuji. Like I said, there's an endless amount of Sailor purples out there, and I don't want to take up too much time on them. But another one of my favorites on here is Wearingeul's Jane Eyre, just because the shading is just so, so beautiful. And then I will go ahead and include a flip back to the magenta inks, even though I'm going to make a separate video with some new ones. But I do want to showcase like Roaring Cleaner Sulfurino, Pilot Iroshizuku Yamabudo, Laban Zeus Purple. Any of these could technically be considered purple to some, but I consider them to be more magenta. Anyways, I want to thank you so much for joining me with these purple inks today. If you have a favorite on the page, I would love to hear about it, or if you have any further recommendations for purples that you didn't see in this video or that you just absolutely love, I would love to hear about those in the comments as well. Once again, stay tuned for my community posts where we vote on what color to do next. Since green was so highly requested after this one, I think that's the next color we will be doing. But again, stay tuned for those posts because I do enjoy y'all's feedback on what color you want to see. But for now, thanks again, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.